DC politicians want to enact harmful credit card mandates that could take away your cashback and rewards points. Perks that stretch your budget and make life a little easier. Losing these benefits means less money for your family's everyday essentials like gas and groceries. The perks you rely on could disappear, leaving you with higher costs and fewer options. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ziprecruiter.com/zip. That's ziprecruiter.com/zip. ziprecruiter.com/zip.
Before we begin, a warning. This episode contains descriptions of extreme violence, intimate partner abuse, and the murder of multiple victims, including children. Listener discretion is strongly advised. April 18th, 2020, Portapique, Nova Scotia, a rural community on the Bay of Fundy, made up of scattered homes, dirt roads, and forested lots. It's the kind of place where neighbors wave when they pass on the gravel road, and where violent crime is almost unheard of. But that night, the peace shattered. It began inside a home on Orchard Beach Drive with a violent assault on the gunman's partner. She was tied up and beaten, but managed to escape into the woods, hiding until morning. What happened next would become the deadliest mass shooting in Canadian history. The details are harrowing, and the questions they leave behind are just as disturbing. Why wasn't the public warned sooner? Could more lives have been saved? And what warning signs had been missed in the years leading up to that night? This is the story of those 13 hours of terror, how they began, how they ended, and the impact that still lingers in Nova Scotia today. I'm Mark, and this is Northern Dark True Canadian Crime. Portapique, Nova Scotia, is a small, scattered community along the Bay of Fundy, where many homes are seasonal cottages. It is Saturday, April 18th, 2020, and it's just after 10 p.m., and darkness has settled over the rural roads. Gabriel Wortman has assaulted his partner, tying her up and beating her. She will later tell investigators she believed she was going to die. Somehow she escapes, slipping into the darkness of the surrounding woods. She hides there for the rest of the night, cold, injured, and terrified, listening as gunshots echo in the distance. Witnesses and later RCMP investigators confirm that Wortman's rampage began at the home of his first victims, acquaintances of his. He shoots and kills multiple people there before setting the house on fire. Flames quickly spread, casting an orange glow visible from nearby properties. Neighbors call 911 to report gunshots and a large blaze. The first call comes in at 10:01 p.m. RCMP officers are dispatched from Colchester County and nearby detachments. While waiting for police, several residents step outside to see what's happening. In the dim light, some spot what they think is an RCMP cruiser, a fully marked Ford Taurus, driving slowly down the road. They assume it's the police responding, but it isn't. It's Wortman, dressed in an authentic RCMP uniform, behind the wheel of one of the decommissioned police vehicles he had meticulously rebuilt and marked to look identical to an active service cruiser. Over the next few minutes, he moves from house to house on Portapique Beach Road and Orchard Beach Drive, killing residents he knows, and some he doesn't. Many victims are shot outside their homes, while others are targeted as they try to flee. Several houses and vehicles are set ablaze, the fires intentionally lit to destroy evidence and confuse first responders. By the time RCMP arrive, the community is illuminated by multiple structure fires. At 10:26 p.m., the first RCMP officers arrive in Portapique. They are immediately confronted with multiple scenes: houses on fire, injured residents fleeing on foot, and conflicting reports of gunfire from different locations. The situation is chaotic, and officers are unable to immediately locate the shooter. Residents are told to shelter in place. Officers begin a grid search, moving carefully through dark, unlit roads and wooded properties, wary of ambush. By 10:35 p.m., more emergency calls are flooding in. Witnesses continue reporting what they believe is an RCMP cruiser driving through the community. This is one of the most dangerous elements of Wortman's plan, his ability to appear as law enforcement, which allows him to get close to his victims without raising an alarm. RCMP later determined that by this point 13 people in Portapique had already been killed. But Wortman doesn't stay there. Sometime between 10:35 and 10:45 p.m., he drives out of Portapique using a little-known farm road or trail that connects to Highway 2. This escape route is unknown to police that night, allowing him to bypass their containment and continue his rampage in other communities the next morning. Back in Portapique, RCMP believe the shooter is still somewhere within the community. Officers set up a perimeter and search through the night, unaware that the killer is already miles away. By sunrise, the fires in Portapique are still smoldering. Inside the burned-out homes, officers will later find the remains of some victims. The full horror of what happened here will only become clear in the days ahead. After the chaos in Portapique, RCMP officers work through the night under the assumption that the gunman is still contained in the community. But Gabriel Wortman has already slipped away, taking advantage of a little-used dirt road to bypass the police perimeter. It's now early morning, Sunday, April 19th. The killer has driven more than 40 kilometers northwest toward the rural community of Wentworth. Along the way, there are no roadblocks, no warning to the public that a man dressed as an RCMP officer in what appears to be an RCMP cruiser is on the move. Around 6:30 a.m., Wortman arrives at the home of 65-year-old Tom Bagley. Bagley is outside, possibly heading to check on a nearby fire. Wortman shoots and kills him in the driveway. Minutes later, Wortman moves toward the home of Sean McLeod and Alana Jenkins, both correctional officers. Police later confirmed that the couple were killed in their home and that their property was set on fire. The blaze destroys the residence, making forensic recovery difficult. A neighbor, Lillian Campbell, is out for her regular morning walk along the road. Wortman encounters her, stops his fake cruiser, and shoots her before continuing on. By 9:35 a.m., word of suspicious activity in the area reaches police, but residents have still not been given an emergency alert through the national system. Instead, RCMP posts their first Facebook update of the day, warning of an armed and dangerous suspect in the Portapique area, more than 3 hours after Wortman left it. After leaving Wentworth, Wortman drives south along rural back roads, eventually approaching the small community of Diebert. At approximately 10:04 a.m., 33-year-old Kristen Beaton is driving to work in her silver SUV. She works for the Victorian Order of Nurses, providing home health care. Her vehicle is marked with a V-on decal, and she is pregnant. Wortman pulls her over, likely using the appearance of his police car to signal her to stop. He shoots her at close range. Just minutes later, 55-year-old Heather O'Brien, also a VON nurse, is driving along Plains Road. She's on her way to visit a client. Wortman stops her vehicle and kills her the same way. Both women are left by the side of the road. By this time, It is clear to the RCMP that Wortman is highly mobile and still actively killing. But the only public warnings remain on social media, an issue that will become one of the most heavily criticized parts of the police response. Police begin tracking his movements south toward the Shuben-Acadie area. He is still in the fully marked replica cruiser, wearing the RCMP uniform and carrying multiple firearms, all illegally obtained. Between 10:15 and 10:30 a.m., the Nova Scotia RCMP Communications Center receives growing reports of shootings outside Portapique. Despite the escalation, an alert-ready message is still not issued. The next phase of the rampage will see Wortman directly confront law enforcement with deadly results. After murdering 2 women in Debert, Wortman continues south along Highway 2 toward Shuben-Acadie. It is now late morning on April 19th, more than 12 hours since the first shots were fired in Portapique, and still, no province-wide emergency alert has gone out. At 10:49 a.m., Constable Heidi Stevenson, a 23-year veteran of the RCMP, is traveling north on Highway 2. She has been searching for the suspect's replica police cruiser. At the same time, Constable Chad Morrison, another RCMP officer, is parked in a marked cruiser near Shuben-Acadie, waiting to link up with Stevenson to coordinate a search. Wortman approaches Morrison's position, still in the fully marked fake RCMP car. Morrison, thinking it's Stevenson arriving, doesn't react until it's too late. Wortman opens fire through the windshield, hitting Morrison several times. Despite his wounds, Morrison manages to accelerate away and call for help. He survives. Moments later, Stevenson sees Wortman's fake cruiser and makes a split-second decision to intercept him head-on. She deliberately rams his vehicle to stop him. Wortman exits his car and opens fire, killing Stevenson at the scene. He also sets her patrol car on fire. Witnesses later say he calmly walked back to his vehicle as the cruiser burned. Nearby, 36-year-old Joey Weber is on his way to get gas when he notices the crash and stops to offer help. Unaware he is walking toward the gunman, Weber is shot and killed. Wortman then takes Stevenson's sidearm and ammunition, along with Weber's silver Ford Escape SUV. At 11:06 a.m., the RCMP announced on Twitter that Wortman is no longer in the replica cruiser, but is driving a silver SUV. Within minutes, Wortman drives to the home of Gina Goulet, a 54-year-old denturist who, like Wortman, had battled cancer. They knew each other professionally, though they were not close. Wortman forces his way in, kills Goulet, changes clothes, and steals her Mazda 3. At 11:24 a.m., he is spotted driving south on Highway 102 through Milford. By 11:26 a.m., over 13 hours after the rampage began, Wortman pulls into the Irving Big Stop service station in Enfield, 92 kilometers south of Portapique and just 40 kilometers from Halifax. He parks at a pump to refuel. 2 RCMP officers arrive moments later. One exits the vehicle with his rifle raised, the other with his pistol. Wortman, sitting in Goulet's Mazda, raises Stevenson's stolen sidearm to his own head, then points it toward the officers. Both officers fire. One discharging 11 rounds from his rifle, the other 12 from his pistol. Wortman is struck multiple times, twice in the head, twice in the neck, 7 times in the right arm, once in the left arm, and 25 times in the torso. At 11:40 a.m., the RCMP confirmed the gunman was dead. Later, Wortman's partner tells police he had been heading toward Halifax to get someone before he was killed. Authorities immediately provide protection to the intended target. The CERT, Nova Scotia's Serious Incident Response Team, will later rule the officer's actions in Enfield justified. The rampage has left 22 people dead, 13 in Portapique, 4 in Wentworth, 2 in Debert, and 3 in Shuben-Acadie. Among them, friends, neighbors, healthcare workers, an RCMP constable, and even an unborn child. The tragedy is now the deadliest mass killing in Canadian history. The RCMP's response to the Nova Scotia attacks of April 2020 became a focal point of scrutiny. As 911 calls poured in, officers faced a chaotic, deadly situation, a gunman disguised as a Mountie tearing through rural communities. But in the aftermath, questions arose about decisions, communication, and missed opportunities to save lives. At the Enfield-Irving Big Stop, the gunman's rampage ended in gunfire. Gabriel Wortman, refueling a stolen SUV, raised a stolen RCMP sidearm to his head. 2 officers fired, 11 rifle rounds and 12 pistol shots. Wortman was hit multiple times, head, neck, arms, and torso. CERT, Nova Scotia's oversight team, ruled the shooting justified in December 2020. Another incident sparked alarm. At the Onslow Belmont Fire Hall, 2 RCMP officers fired, mistaking a colleague and an emergency management worker for the gunman. No one was hurt, but the error fueled fear. CERT's investigation continues. The RCMP's decision not to use Canada's Alert Ready system drew fierce criticism. They relied on Twitter and Facebook instead. Officials later said the crisis moved too fast for a clear alert, and by 10:15 a.m. on April 19th, when an alert was considered, the gunman was dead within 90 minutes. But for rural residents, this wasn't enough. Spotty cell service and limited social media use, especially among seniors, left many unaware. Survivors and families insisted an alert could have saved lives. One told CBC, "People were out, unaware a killer dressed as a Mountie was loose." Even the U.S. consulate issued a warning using RCMP data. Public outcry led to the Mass Casualty Commission, announced July 2020. Led by former Chief Justice J. Michael MacDonald, retired Police Chief Leanne J. Fitch, and lawyer Dr. Kim Stanton, it examined RCMP tactics, the alert failure, and links to domestic violence. Hearings revealed 911 calls, police radio, and survivor testimony. The March 2023 report was scathing, faulting the RCMP for delayed warnings, poor preparation, rigid command structures, and weak accountability. Over half of its 130 recommendations targeted the RCMP, calling for an independent review, tighter gun laws, and a public alert ready system. CBC's The Fifth Estate and the Halifax Examiner exposed communication gaps and a reactive response. Criminologists urged better training for active shooter scenarios. Families felt sidelined, learning details from media, not police. The Mass Casualty Commission exposed painful truths. Mistakes were made, some deadly. Its recommendations offer hope for change, but for the scarred communities, the quest for accountability endures. In the wake of Canada's deadliest mass shooting, a nation mourned. Grief hung heavy, but it was quickly joined by action, bold, controversial moves to reshape the country's approach to gun control. The Nova Scotia tragedy forced a reckoning, raising questions about violence, safety, and what could have been done to stop it. On May 1, 2020, just 12 days after the attacks, the Trudeau government acted decisively. Through an order in council, over 1,500 models of assault-style firearms were reclassified as prohibited under the Firearms Act. The list included the AR-15, the Ruger Mini-14 from the École Polytechnique massacre, and the Beretta CX-4 Storm used at Dawson College. Overnight, it became illegal to sell, transport, import, or use these weapons. Owners were given a 2-year amnesty to surrender or sell them back through a proposed buyback program. Public Safety Minister Bill Blair also pledged to strengthen red flag laws, letting courts remove firearms from those deemed a danger. The ban won praise from gun control advocates but sparked fierce backlash. Critics, including firearms experts and victims' families, noted the gunman's weapons were illegally obtained. He held no license. They argued the ban targeted law-abiding owners without addressing the tragedy's root causes. Opposition politicians called it a reactive move, rushed before the Mass Casualty Commission could investigate. 5 legal challenges emerged, claiming the ban overstepped the Firearms Act. The Mass Casualty Commission's 2023 report urged stronger gun laws, but cautioned that no single policy could have stopped the Nova Scotia attacks. It pointed to illegal firearms trafficking, domestic violence, and police response gaps as critical failures, urging a broader approach to prevention. The Nova Scotia tragedy forced Canada to grapple with its deepest fears about violence, preparedness, and loss. The changes it sparked, from gun bans to calls for reform, continue to shape the nation's path towards safety. But for many, the question lingers: will they be enough? After 13 hours of unimaginable horror, Nova Scotia turned to mourning. The loss of 22 lives left a wound that stretched far beyond Portapique. But with the COVID-19 pandemic locking down gatherings, the ways people honored the fallen had to adapt, finding light in a time of darkness. Across Canada, flags dropped to half-mast, from Ottawa's Parliament Hill to small town halls. In the House of Commons, MPs stood in a silent tribute, their bowed heads a shared gesture of sorrow. On April 20th, 2020, the CN Tower glowed blue and white for Nova Scotia, pulsing with RCMP red, blue, and gold to honor Constable Heidi Stevenson. The next night, Niagara Falls' Canadian and American Cascades shimmered in the same colors, a rare cross-border act of solidarity. Pandemic restrictions barred public gatherings, so Nova Scotia's main memorial went online, streamed live on Facebook and CBC television. Recorded messages, haunting musical performances, and heartfelt tributes from loved ones filled the airwaves. Across the province, people lit candles in their windows, small flickers of light stitching together a grieving community. GoFundMe campaigns sprang up to support victims' families, drawing donations from Canada and beyond. But grief attracted opportunists. At least one fraudulent fundraiser was shut down, prompting RCMP's Jeff Thompson to warn against scams exploiting the tragedy. In Portapique, a roadside shrine of flowers, notes, and crosses appeared overnight. Over time, the community sought permanence. A former church was transformed into a memorial, housing photos, mementos, and tributes, a quiet space for reflection and healing, as CBC News noted, to reclaim peace from pain. On the second anniversary, April 18, 2022, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino spoke of the enduring pain and pledged to act on the Mass Casualty Commission's forthcoming recommendations. The vigils, the lights, the memorials, they were more than gestures. They were a defiance of despair, a vow that the 22 lives lost would live on in memory. I'm Mark.
And I'm Leah. Thank you for joining us once again. This was such a devastating chapter in Nova Scotia's history, one that left deep scars on families and communities across the province.
Every time I go over this case, I'm struck by just how many moments should have, gone differently.
And part of that is the government response, right? In the days after, we heard condolences from all levels, right? The Prime Minister, the Premier, even the Queen, and there were clear calls for change.
Yeah. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke from Rideau Cottage, asked people not to give the gunman the gift of infamy, and then within days announced that sweeping ban on more than 1,500 models of what the government called assault-style firearms.
Which included 2 of the models used here. But there's still debate. A lot of experts pointed out his guns were obtained illegally, smuggled or stolen, so the ban wouldn't have stopped this attack. At the same time, there was talk about expanding red flag laws, so families could petition to remove guns from someone who's a risk.
And then the bigger picture, the Mass Casualty Commission's findings. Over half of those 130 recommendations were aimed at the RCMP. Everything from public warning failures and training gaps to the need for an independent review of the force and a proper overhaul of the alert-ready system.
Speaking of public mourning, the memorials mattered. Flags at half-mast across Canada, the House of Commons moment of silence, the CN Tower lit in Nova Scotia's colors and RCMP red, blue, and gold. Even Niagara Falls glowing blue and white. Because of COVID, people gathered virtually. A province-wide vigil streamed online and on TV so families and friends could grieve together.
And in Portapique, that permanent memorial in a former church, a place to remember each of the 22 lives. Fundraisers helped families with immediate costs, though there were warnings about frauds popping up, which is awful in a moment like that.
The inquiry also put a spotlight on misogyny and domestic violence. This started with an assault on his partner. And advocates have said for years that coercive control is a red flag that can escalate to broader violence. Some have pushed for a Canadian law similar to the UK's to address those patterns early.
There was research mobilization too. Heal Nova Scotia, bringing together partners in health and academia to study violence and healing. It's the kind of work that, hopefully, over time, leads to earlier intervention.
And then the legal aftermath. Families filed suits against the gunman's estate and separate actions against the RCMP in the province of Nova Scotia over how the attacks were handled and how families were treated. There's a proposed class action to unify claims. The estate itself got complicated. His partner stepped down as executor and filed her own claim, and later the family's suit expanded to include additional parties connected to him.
The public conversation kept going too. Media investigations, the Fifth Estate, the Halifax Examiner, reconstructed timelines and pressed hard on the alert-ready decision. The RCMP posted updates and set up a condolences page, but the trust gap was real for a lot of people.
Bottom line, there's policy, there's policing, there's law, but there are also families who live with this every day. Memorials and reforms only matter if we actually follow through.
Well said. And when you live through something like this, you need answers, not platitudes from police and government officials.
I don't even know what I would do after something like this.
Nobody truly does. I'm just glad we can keep this story alive for the victims and the community, and hopefully prevent a similar tragedy like this from ever happening again.
And if you want to keep these stories alive, you can follow us on X at Northern Dark TCC, and it really helps if you rate and review the podcast on Apple or Spotify. It helps more people find us and hear these cases.
Well, thanks to everyone listening for spending time with us on Northern Dark, True Canadian Crime. This podcast exists to bring light to unsolved cases, and those with a profound community impact. We'll be back next week with another story. Until then, take care of each other.